of Notting Hill in London has a peak density of 17,000 people per hectare. So 3,000 in Hastings is not, as some politicians like to tell you, a high density area. It's a pretty low density area. We all have lots of space. Some of that space, a good deal of that space, is wasted, and a good deal of it is also in public ownership. What it's about, if you ever watch Phil and Kirsty on Location, 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 is that it's about amenity, and we all also know that. You have to provide the services and the local amenity. That's why people like to live in quite densely populated areas. So don't be afraid of density if it comes with good amenities. The local plan needs more flats. The particular problem we have locally is about conservation policy and how that is interpreted, but I can go into that in more detail if you want. Yeah, all sorts of other stuff here, but come and talk to me.
Thank you so much, Ken. Ken, like many of the people here today, is a mine of information, and what we want to use this opportunity for today is for you to go and talk to Ken, go and talk to Sarah at the Hastings Rental Health Co-op. Use this time to talk to people and get the information you need so you can fill out the consultation.
Hi everybody. So the decisions we make with this local plan will reverberate through the generations. So it's up to us to make sure that we make the right decisions. And there's a lot in the local plan, the draft local plan, that we really like. So I'm from Standing Up for Nature, but obviously climate comes into that as well. And we've already looked through, and if you look on our stall over there, we've got our response to the local plan. You're very welcome to use parts of that. This is it. I won't go through it all because we won't whip through it, but we've got 4 overarching things that we've looked at. One of them is to do with brownfield sites. I'm going to leave that to the architects and Ken. We're mostly concerned with biodiversity and climate. So we all talk about carbon emissions. There's a quick science 101 for you. We would normally get energy from the sun, absorbed by the earth, reflects, and off you go, out to space, everything's in balance, that's great. Unfortunately, the more carbon emissions we emit as humans, and that includes construction, the more heat will be trapped in the atmosphere. Then we start to get our heating seas. As the seas heat, that evaporates and that comes back down as rain. For every degree that we heat, we get 7% extra rainfall. At the moment we're at 1.5 degrees, so that's about 10% more rainfall. And I think we can see that in Hastings, or the other way. That's it. So we've had flooding, and you have multiple factors that cause the flooding, but when you've got a high rainfall, a higher sea surface, more flooding from storm surges, which we get as sea level rises, and we see places like the town centre and Alexandra Park flooded. And out of the two, the town centre would arguably have cost a lot more to put right. Natural spaces will just soak up flooding, and then on the whole, they can recover quite quickly. They don't cause millions of pounds worth of damage. This is a property in South Terrace, which was flooded in 23. Those flats are still empty. So 3 years after, they tried to do them up, then they were flooded again, and then they just sat there empty. They've done them up, we tried to rent them out, and come on, you can take it. They've tried to rent them out, and now they're up for auction. So in a town with a housing crisis, we've already got climate refugees. People are being displaced by climate in Hastings already. This isn't Hastings. Oh, I'm sorry. This isn't Hastings, but this is the UK. So you can see that building sites, on new build sites, we are already having them flooding before they've even been finished. Like, how are you ever going to get insurance to live in a place like that? 2 more sites in Hastings. When you get a lot of rainfall, our clay soil is really good at soaking up rain, and that's a good thing in one way, but when it gets really heavy and then it starts to move, we get problems like we had at Old Royal Gill and along behind West Hill in St Leonard's. So moving of waterlogging, we can already see in Hastings what this is doing to our houses. So when you're looking at sites, the whole water issue is a massive, massive thing. So this is the old town. Everything in red there is predicted to flood annually. So it's not going to be flooded all the time, but annually by 2050. That's the whole main road along through the old town. And the next one, Grace? And that's along at the other end of the town, Bulverhive all the way up. So we already know these sites that were historically prone to flooding will be the first ones to go, but that doesn't mean the others are immune at all. It's just that these are the ones that we... Oh, can you go back one? So this was one of our 4 sort of statements that we made overall, was that the policy which was in the previous local plan, OSP1, tackling climate change, we felt could have been stronger and should be integral to the whole thing. It seems to have been lost a bit, and I don't know if that's because people just assume that we know it now, but we feel that something like planning, it has to be tied down really tightly in the wording. So that's one you can pop in. Yeah. So when we're talking about the greenfield sites, which we've got a lot of here, soil will hold an awful lot of water, and our soil holds even more water. Sandy soil tends to let it go through, but clay soil will hold on to it. So our soil is probably holding between 30 and 40% of the rain that comes down. So when you're looking at where that water goes to, and the other properties that it's going to affect, that's something that should always be in the forefront of our minds now, because there's no point building houses which are going to flood existing houses. That's just, it just doesn't make sense. The other thing that it will kind of draw down is carbon. We're talking about carbon emissions from all the things we do. Everything we do that uses energy will make carbon emissions. So if we can draw that down in the soil and in the plants, and you can't do that if you've built over it, because rocks and paving don't absorb carbon and they don't absorb water. So we said that we should prioritise retrofitting over demolition. That fits in with what you'll hear from the architects later. And that this should be considerably strengthened. So at the moment, it's a lot easier for developers to go for greenfield sites. There's no VAT, there's no existing things in the soil to sort out. It's much cheaper for them, and it's easier to make a profit on a property on a new bridge. You can just roll out your trades, you're in and out, and it's not like going into little individual properties. But this is what we've got to do. We've got to not do things for the ease of developers. We've got to do things for the benefit of the communities that already live there. So this is your carbon emissions from retrofitting and refurb, and this is your carbon emissions from new builds. So right from the beginning, these properties are causing problems with the actual construction, before you talk about the flooding and the other effects as well. I'm trying to rush here. We had loads of things we liked in the plan, things like for nature, Swift bricks being mandated, and passive house standards, which mean these houses are so efficient that they practically run themselves. You almost don't have an energy bill. I'm sure Energised Sussex Coast will tell you more about those. So we're really pleased to see those, and we really hope that the government doesn't make our council water that down, because that's things that we want. So some of the sites that you'll have heard of today, up at Tarkham Farm Fields, Sandrock Bends, Speckled Wood, Convent site, and along at the bathing pool. The thing that we need to do, and to have this running all through this plan, is to strengthen the protection from those green sites. We absolutely agree and understand with the council that these are government targets, and we know that they're in a terrible bind trying to meet the demands of the government but the needs of the local community. So something you can also do is to talk to your MP and say that this is a government target. We need these to be made more realistic, because they just aren't. Other things apart from soaking up flooding and carbon that we get from ecosystems are called ecosystem services. So our crops won't grow if they don't have insects to pollinate them. And those insects don't live on the crops, they need somewhere for their caterpillars and their larvae to breed and to feed. And those are what we call our wild spaces now. It's not good enough to say, well, I'm going to stick a few kind of car park shrubs in my new development. That's not what the native flowers that these creatures need. We need them for things like nutrient cycling, dealing with our waste, producing oxygen, because we all need to breathe. We all love, the first thing people say was, oh, I went for a walk and I felt so much better. It's just for our mental health and our physical well-being. And because the things that already live there have a right to live there. They're not just something disposable that we can go, well, we want to live there, so you're all just going to have to kind of get out the way, because there is nowhere for them to go anymore. These are tiny pockets that are left, and we need to keep them, because they have a right to live too. So this is why one of our things that we said was that the local nature recovery strategy should be fully incorporated into the plan. The government has said that the LNRS is mandatory. You have to have one. Costs a lot of money, took a lot of time. But then they say it just gives a bit of an uplift on biodiversity net gain, which means you pay or you just have to do a little bit more work on your development. So they're not a blocker at all. So I really feel like it should be, because if you look at this, and I think you might have seen it in Ken's earlier, all of the red sites are areas that are important for biodiversity, and all of the orange sites are areas that could be improved for biodiversity. So the whole point is to have a network, because things don't live on little ecological islands. If you say, well, we've put all this money into making a map of the network, but oh, you can build on the network anyway, it all just seems a bit pointless. So you can mention that. So I would say, as a grandparent, that everything we do in this local plan now will be felt by our children and our grandchildren, and they won't thank us. They won't be able to live in houses that are full of water or that can't get insurance, and they will need those wild spaces to go and to have their mental health and to take their children. So I would say, let's make sure that we are good ancestors and that we make the right decisions now. Thank you.
Okay. Right, so does anybody have any questions for Jane about any of that presentation or points you'd like to add? Questions? Sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Now, I'm sorry about this, but I don't agree with a lot of this nature stuff in urban areas, because urban areas are for people primarily. Everything is, in my opinion. My opinion is based on lots of experience of where people live and the sort of places we should be building. We can have buildings. The difficult thing to get across to people used to some of the rubbish that's been built in Hastings over the years is that you can have very green buildings. You can have buildings that are raised on pilotis where the green space goes underneath. You can have buildings with plants on them where the plants grow, and you could even grow food on your buildings. You could have planted roofs on your buildings. You need to look at some of these really sustainable buildings, because there's about 4% of our country is covered with buildings. The rest of it is given over to nature. Let's not overemphasise this point. We need houses.
Shall I give you a pass?
I think the audience
Do
will
I have to
answer.
ask you? Do you know you said you need houses? No. Do you know you said you need houses, and we need more houses, and we're just going to turn our back on nature?
No, I didn't say that.
It's similar.
No, I didn't.
But the houses you want to build are more energy friendly, more green, that's what you said, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But if you stand and look at what's going on now, all the development,
It's got to be different.
all the development, everything that's going wrong, all the flooding, you're overpopulating town after town.
Yeah.
And then what's going to happen? There's going to be all these houses, they're all going to be flooded, and there's going to be no green space. So sometimes you've got to stand and look and see, count the costs.
I just want to say, I've lived in Hastings for, I can't remember how many years, I think it's about 50. But when when I've been here for something like 10 years, I seem to remember a borough surveyor saying we've built on everything we can realistically build on in Hastings now. That's about 40 years ago. And when I was a kid in Hastings, there weren't many bits where you couldn't see something green somewhere, even a little wood or something. And we're not just leaving a bit for nature because we're kind. Kids can't grow up without nature around them. A blooming pot plant on some fancy building isn't having nature around you. Thank you.
The sort of one point is I think that so much of our housing is driven by developers and the needs of the GDP, which is based on the housing market. The other thing, you talked about the climate emergency, but I remember those slides, when was it, 2018, which is what, 8 years ago, and we had 12 years. 28, 40, 4 years, 6 years ago, sorry, my math is shit. But like this week it's like in Alabama 46 degrees, in California 38 degrees in March, and it's like the climate emergency is now happening. And we're talking about how we can persuade a government planner to allow us to talk about passive house. And I thought sometimes I'm like, this isn't like serious. There's an emergency that they talk about now. We're going to hit 2 degrees of warming by 2030 possibly. You lose 20% of the Earth's habitable surface at 2 degrees. You have 2 billion climate refugees. So I know we have to think about what the planning officer's going to say, but surely we should be picking a political fight over this. We should be saying, no, actually if you want to address the housing problem, Airbnb, second homes, empty homes, do you know what I mean? And it's just nonsense. And I don't talk about demonstrations, I think they're carbon sinks. Do you know what I mean? And I can't, Roy's going to be under bloody water. Where are those people going to live? This is an emergency. And if the national government was saying we're not going to deal with an emergency, would we say, oh, that's all right then? So, answer.
I would say this government and our council have declared a climate emergency in 2019. We declared a nature emergency last year. So when we're in an emergency, we do things differently. And I feel that the targets coming down from government are not seeing that this is an emergency. Like if I see somebody's house is on fire, I'm not going to send them an email. I'm going to go and smash a window and get them out. It's an emergency situation.
Hang on, I'm just going to take this lady over here. The wire is too short.
Hello, I'll be quick. I should have been in the last one, but what I really enjoyed that. And this is part of it. This is the convent bit, and the bit you're looking for in the convent bit is R2. Everything that they say about the convent is lovely, apart from R2, which reads, appropriate residential development is acceptable, in principle, on the playing fields. And that's the bit that we don't want. Because if they say that, the site immediately becomes profitable. And that means developers who want to make a profit can get in. If you say that you cannot build on the fields, and what we want to do is retrofit the existing buildings 100% with social housing for over 55s, temporary housing for people who haven't got anywhere, and people with autistic problems, people who need special housing. That's what we want to do. And if we have to compete with a developer who's able to build on a flat field, we're not going to get it. But that's why we're asking. We're not just being NIMBYs. So what we're looking for is R2 number 2. The rest of it's lovely. R2 number 2, that's us. Thank you. And they forgot to put the non-cemetery on the picture. There's a cemetery up there as well. So they've got that. So it makes it sensitive. So it means they can't. But they're probably going to try. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kat. Wait, and Kat's got a stall at the back for Save with the Convent site. Can you ask more about that?
It seems to me that one of the issues is that we've just got to get over that it's so much easier for new builds, and that is what the big commercial builders are interested in. But in order to retrofit, we are going to have to build up expertise in our community, and the first few projects will be really difficult, but then when we become a centre of excellence, we can try and show other places where how to do it.
Yeah, my husband's a builder and he retrofits bathrooms for people with disabilities. So we do know there's problems in existing buildings, but they're not insurmountable. And things like if you either put that on greenfield sites or take it off of retrofitting, that levels up the playing field a bit money-wise. But we have the building ability in this town. It just costs too much to do it. We have a lot of heritage buildings, but we can change that. It's all through planning, and it's all what we decide to do. Like, why do we have to decide to do the cheapest thing that benefits some out-of-town developer? Why don't we give the work to the builders in this town?
All I was going to say is, what I can understand is what we're doing is we're creating a mass extinction. You know, I understand we're in the process of it happening.
Yes.
What let me say was,
government have cut all the red tape, and they're trying to stand for the manifesto. They've got to build so many houses, so they're not really bothered where they build them or how they build. They've just got to get their numbers fitted. So, okay, so could you fight the corner? Well, the overpopulating towns, water companies can't supply the houses.
Yeah.
You can't get doctor's appointment, hospital appointment, kids can't get school. So surely shouldn't we be fighting it on that grounds? Because the other way is not seem to be working. They've cut the red tape, haven't they?
Yeah, so I mean, I have 15 minutes to do climate and nature, but definitely all of the different things all link in together because that makes the whole picture, and we can't do it without the housing groups. But yeah, you're definitely right. The Planning and Infrastructure Act, which I spent last year campaigning on when it was a bill, and it was very boring, but it now means that you can get away, as a developer, you can get away with so much more. So we thought we had a fight before with planning, now everything has just got a lot harder. So if you can tell people that and get them to motivate now.
And Hugh has been working on refurbishment proposals for the forecourts and Clifton Courts, and also a patented design around how to build sustainable housing. So I'm just going to hand it over to Hugh. He's going to speak for about 10 minutes to the slides, and then there'll be a chance for questions and your feedback.
Thanks very much, Grace. So I'm going to whip through what we're up to at the moment. So I run an architecture business called View that has developed a flexible design-led factory-built system to build above car parks and
Closer to your mouth.
yeah. Thanks, Grace. So Top House is a system to make better use of the airspace above car parks. Thanks, Grace, that's better, yeah. And the space above buildings. So we spoke to the council a couple of years ago. We've identified, let's look here. So here are some examples of schemes that we're working on around the UK. This is the airspace above a three-storey office building, which stays in place. That one's recommended for planning approval. This is airspace above a police station and car park in Derby, and this is opposite Ipswich railway station flats. The system is all about high-quality homes being built in the factories. This gets away from bad quality and slow and expensive homes. So we've done audits around the UK. This particular presentation was to Brighton and Hove City Council, and we've identified 6,000 homes on land that's owned by the council. In this same exercise that we did, we presented to Hastings Council just recently. Let's just go and talk about Clifton Court. So we have identified scope for over 1,000 homes on council-owned land around Hastings, and as part of that exercise, we identified potential on 2 housing association-owned sites. This is Clifton Court. So what we're proposing here is is recladding the outside of Clifton Court, but this isn't with the very thin layer of petroleum-based insulation, which is what did for Grenfell. This is non-flammable with fireproof concrete structural fire breaks up the building. That protects the building from the sun and the rain, and it also gives space for plants. It holds the building together, so there's lots of buildings that were built in the mid-20th century have structural problems, so this solves the structural problems, which are the problem actually in Hastings. But what we're doing is our proposal here has retrofits all the units at the back, at the front, and then around the back we are we're building there's 15 top house new build homes on the space at the back of the building, and that looks so that's on this car park space here, and what this looks like on plan is, so on the left hand side we have the existing buildings here. They're currently not recommended for retrofit because of problems with access and lifts and fire safety, but our design adds in another lift and creates additional fire escapes as well as these extra units. So this now, the proposal for Clifton Court is 73 homes. Whizzing over to 4 courts, let's just have a look there. This might take a moment to load. So 4 courts, we'll just zoom in here. These the four towers, this is the current arrangement where there's 2 lifts that stop at alternate floors, which is really inconvenient for the residents. There's also any kind of work to this building means that it would then come under the fire regs, where you've got to have a second staircase. So what we've done is if we zoom into Roosevelt, for example, we've added an extra stair on one side and an extra lift on one side, and this is big enough for a very large lift, so you can get a bed in and makes the building a lot more flexible, and second stair. And we're remodelling the 2 one-bed flats in order to accommodate that, and that would be along with the retrofit of the whole building. What we're doing is this is what it looks like. I think I'm good for time, aren't I, Grace? We're talking about retrofitting the existing towers in a way that we just spoke about, and here these are some concept ideas to keep the community centre and the nursery. They get re-roofed. The nursery playground is moved to one side. We've put that on the plans, Grace. Yeah, well done. And this is an indicative layout. This is subject to tree surveys, because obviously we don't want to be damaging or hurting any of the trees. But this is about good custodianship of the existing buildings. That they were paid for by the British public back in the mid-20th century. The buildings need to be properly assessed to see whether they are structurally unsavable. Our approach allows minor structural issues and the endemic problems with large panel system, which contributed to the Ronan Point collapse. The top house system is designed to deal with that. We are now looking for a council to do this as a pilot. We've met with the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, with the Minister. We think that there is potential to get at least the early ones of these funded by central government. So that wouldn't actually come out of Hastings. own budget, or the social. It's owned by a housing association, but it's all public money at the end of the day. And this particular approach shows some additional homes around the outside. So I think that was that was me racing through the two proposals. Good. Over to Grace for questions.
Race through the proposals, but yeah, Andrea, do you want to kick off with a question? Come up and speak into the mic, just so everyone can hear.
So, as we well know, they are due. Whoa, that light is bright. Sorry. As we know, the current plans are due to demolish the forecourts hub at the end of this year. I know it's not due to be used anyway from the end of this year, which is an integral part to the residents around this area, which is going to be a real shame. It's great to see that your plans are due to keep that, which is great. And I also see from the updated versions of your plans that you are due to also have some extra houses around the forecourt towers, which is really nice. And also keeping the use of the actual forecourts is amazing, because we all know taking away our green spaces isn't something that we want to do from what we've all been speaking about. It isn't something that we should be doing, and losing our green spaces isn't a place that we should all be going forward with. So I think the plans look amazing, to be fair. So I forgot what my other point was, so I was like, wow, the community centre's there. So it's something that we use with regards to Hastings. We use that a lot, so I was really happy to see that that was still there. I think that kind of threw off my question. So thank you.
If you can, thank you.
I just have a question about future management. Would the blocks be still under the control of Southern Housing, or would they be managed by the residents who live there?
We're agnostic about who manages it. It's currently being run by a housing association, and so we can't sort of force this. However, the council does have the power to refuse a planning permission on this site until a proper assessment has been done to see whether the building really can't be saved. In terms of management, I don't think Jess is here. Sorry, there you are, Jess, behind me. No. But Jess, we've been talking for a couple of years about how important it is for communities to actually take over the management of buildings. You have a much better outcome when the people who live in it help manage it, as opposed to a top-down sort of approach where people aren't invested. But here today, I'm talking about solutions, technical architectural solutions. But like I said, I'm agnostic, but I think it would be great if the council would start seriously thinking about encouraging these blocks to be taken over by the community, or at least manage, some management role. On these solar panels, good question. We haven't shown solar panels on these. We haven't shown solar panels on the proposals at the moment. It's definitely something that can be integrated into the building, because it's a good question, because the four towers of four courts have a huge sort of surface area. One of the things that we're actually working with an artist, because you can get some really nice solar panels that can appear like a pixelated image, but that requires a lot of work to get right, because it can look like a sort of a horrible big black shiny box if you don't get it right. But we're really open to that. Good question. Yeah.
you. You mentioned that you would need to assess the structure of the forecourts. In your experience of your previous projects and with regards to the top-3 design, can you just tell me a little bit more about what your expectations would be on towers like that?
Thanks, Becca. Yeah. So we developed Top House when after the Grenfell disaster. It was a very simple idea, which was, well, surely if there had been some sort of like, well, yes, basically if the scaffolding had been up, people could escape down the outside of the building. And then we thought, actually, well, hold on, maybe that's the thing. So maybe you could actually create a layer around the outside of the building that grips the building, straps it together, reinforces it, and into that you can integrate proper, decent insulation, as opposed to this sort of 25mm, basically solidified petrol, which was on the outside of the Grenfell towers. You have 200 or 300 millimetres deep of rock wool. It's basically made out of rock. It's just impossible to burn. And with these structural concrete fire breaks, so it provides amenity space, and people can put plants out there. And in the case of the proposals that we did at the Grenfell Sisters, because one thing that most people don't realise is there's 4 other towers next to Grenfell. We call them the Grenfell Sisters. We've done very detailed proposals there. And what we do, we then saw the difficulty of doing a pilot on something that's owned, effectively state-owned. I know they're owned by a housing association. It's all our money, essentially, at the end of the day. So we developed the Top House idea for new homes above car parks, which is what I very briefly started off. And that's we've now, as an architecture practice, have got 200 of those are permitted around the UK, another 100 due to be permitted soon. We've got thousands planned. And that has given us the confidence and given people actually this is actually a really simple system. These outside decks, it's a lot more sociable with the new build because people will access. So it's instead of being it's a lot more resilient as well because it protects the buildings from the sun and the rain. And I'm sure everyone gets a bit disappointed when a nice new building goes up and then 10 years later it's all stained and looking a mess but we also need to protect buildings and people from the weather that's going to carry on getting much, much worse. So really all the way back to your question, the structural side of things, it was specifically designed to deal with a large panel system that the failure at Ronan Point, which was a tower that collapsed after a gas boiler exploded. So this is like a structural cradle that keeps the whole building together. So our system is designed to address that. Some buildings have what's colloquially known as concrete cancer, and that's where the steel reinforcement is set too close to the surface and it rusts. It's very easy to see that. We've done some initial inspections of the 4 towers and can't see any evidence of that. However, the proposals, there could be we're not structural engineers, so it needs to be subject to a structural survey. That was a very long answer to your question, wasn't it?
Thank you. A question here, but I can't reach across as far as you.
Okay, I have a question regarding you talk about the design, but have you considered to eliminate gas and just have electricity? You have, is it all electric?
Yeah, absolutely.
All electric, okay,
yeah.
That's fine. Okay, electric, and there was another question. So it's all electric, and so potential solar power. I've got to think in terms of energy, that's all now.
Great, thank you. I just want to point out at this point that the way it's placed as a local plan is that in the local plan there's a section called housing renewal areas, and those housing renewal areas, in that weird euphemistic language of plans, means housing demolition areas. And in the local plan, it basically gives a priori approval to the demolition of the forecourts and Clifton Court and another block in Earl Street. So if you want to support this kind of proposal, this refurbishment proposal, plan, you need to refer to the housing renewal area section of the plan and say there should be a retrofit first approach to all demolition, which is that's the jargon you need basically. Southern Housing and Orbit must look and develop plans like this and show why they can't retrofit it before they get permission to demolish it. So just throwing that little pointer in there.
Apologies if you already mentioned this, but in your proposals, would the units feature any kind of insulation?
Yep, don't have to stick you in your answer.
Thanks. Yeah, good question. Absolutely. Very deep cladding goes on around the whole of the outside of the building. So instead of the this thin little petrochemical cladding that obviously was being blown off Devon, I think it is, at Four Courts here. So this one here. It's very difficult to stick something thin onto a 17-storey building and for it not to get blown off, actually. And so, but the top house approach allows very thick, very deep insulation to go across the whole building. Also allows you to maintain it because stuff always happens. You need to go back and fix it. But scaffolding one of these towers is phenomenally expensive. The way our system works, let's hopefully there we go. Oh, this is a bit fast, but you can see what's going on. You can see what's going on there. It allows you, as well as protecting the building from the weather, it holds the insulation in, and you can actually go back and just send an operative up there to, oh, there's a leak, oh, there's probably this window, and you don't have a nightmare where you have to scaffold up 10 stories. So yes, insulation is a really key part of our proposal.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, I can't see from that exactly, but are those balconies that go around the flats?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because I would like to encourage people to hang their washing out. in Japan, the weather forecast tells you when it's good to hang your washing out, and every flat has a rail for your hang your washing out.
I don't know if it might be worth you going back to the proposals you have for the new buildings to explain the modular design and that you're talking about, because that's also an important part of these proposals, is that if you build modular designed houses, a lot of the work is done in a factory using sustainable materials, and you don't have years, months of dust and dirt and noise and disruption in the community as well. A lot of the work is done off-site and they can be assembled really quickly. Am I selling it well, Hugh? Do you want to tell them some more about your system? And if anyone else wants to ask a question?
Yeah, thanks for that, Grace. It's really interesting thing, actually. One of the problems about this never occurred to me until I've been talking to manufacturers recently. One of the problems with the very poor quality of buildings that get built is it's a young person's game, being out in all weathers, and when a person gets sort of old in years, into their 30s and 40s, I'm late 50s now, so I definitely wouldn't want to be out there all day. You lose those skills and that workmanship and that sort of problem solving and that just experience. Whereas factory-built homes, there's actually quite a much noticeably larger proportion of people, middle-aged people, who've got lots of experience and can deal with these. So not only is it built indoors, you've got all these experienced people there, and that's. So it's all these things that add up. Now, one of the really exciting things that flow from what we're doing is we're making proposals for thousands, literally thousands of these homes on council-owned sites around the UK. And what we're looking to do is put together a pipeline of 1,000 homes in the Mayor of Sussex area, really. Brighton, all the way to Hastings, up to Crawley, and it's not a big ask. for each local authority to make available 200 or 300 homes of sites. And that way, when you tender a pipeline of 1,000 homes, the costs collapse. And I'm not comparing myself to Henry Ford here, but Henry Ford, when he started making the Model T Ford, it was the price was comparable to his competitors. After 3 years, the price was 1/6, and the quality was immeasurably better. And what the problem is we just got to stop building rubbish quality homes in outdoors.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I have lived in Hastings since about 2002, and I have lived through all the consultations for the sea-space developments that happened. And when they were doing their building and getting their plans, the buildings were not meant to last long 25, maybe 50 years, and I wonder how long your buildings should last. And also, the whole cladding thing, I'm assuming that safe cladding has been developed since then.
No, thank you. That was lifespan is a really good question because that's about carbon. So as well as training as an architect, I originally trained as a building surveyor, and that's all about. At college, we were taught a good hat and good boots, and the building will last forever. It really will. As long as there isn't damp coming up from the bottom or damp coming from the top, it'll last for. Some of the oldest buildings in this country are timber buildings that have actually burned down several times, but the structure's still there. One of the sad things at the moment is we're not allowed to build above 6 stories in timber, even though Canada and Norway are going to 40, 50 stories. So anyway, I'm getting off the issue there of insulation. Yes, it'll be non-flammable, something like rock wool, which is made out of ground-up rock. So it absolutely never can burn.
Thank you.
If a building has proper hat and boots,